So I'm here with Matthew Hamilton-James, who is the CFO of Motability Operations. Welcome, Matthew.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Well, thanks for joining us today. My reason for reaching out in the first place, I guess, was being quite drawn to Motability Operations as an organisation and your purpose, and as the CFO of that business. I think you've been there, is it 23 years now?
That's right, yes.
And an amazing journey, and you know, the stories that you must have. I'm sure the audience would be really, really interested in learning a little bit more about.
Yeah, absolutely. So, my journey at Motability Operations started in 2001, a generation ago in reality. And I often reflect my eldest daughter, who's now 23, was 5 months old when I joined there. So It is literally a generation. Yeah. What attracted me to move there, if I'm honest, at that point in time, I was a part qualified accountant and very early in my career, just making the next move. Prior to that, I worked for Dick Lovett, the car dealership based in Bristol, as a dealer accountant. So the move really was one where I didn't actually know an awful lot about Motability Operations, and it's quite a well-kept secret, I think, unless perhaps you have personal experience of disability or somebody in your friend or family who accesses the scheme. So I joined Motability Operations, a bit of a blind career move, if I'm being completely honest about it. And I got lucky. I mean, I joined a business which has a really clear purpose in terms of what it delivers, and perhaps we can come on to talk about that in a bit. Yeah. But a business that has continually changed and evolved, and it's had to adapt to many things over those years. And for me, what that brought with it was some opportunity, many different opportunities and challenges to sort of move through different roles, really embrace that. And I think as an organisation, we look to nurture talent from within and offer progression, offer opportunities. And so 23 years later, I'm now, I think 7 years into being CFO at Motability Operations.
Amazing to see how your career's evolved during that time. And early on in your career, you mentioned that you started out on a grad scheme with the NHS. Obviously, Motability is a purpose-driven organisation. I know that you get involved with charities outside of work as well. What do you think is about you and your upbringing, childhood, your sort of why that gives you that need to work with organisations that give back, would you say?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, I think my decision, as I just mentioned, to join Motability Operations was probably not the most informed career choice at the time. Yeah. Not terribly well researched. So, you could argue that maybe I fell into something that is purpose driven by chance. Yeah. But having been there and having seen, I guess, what the business delivers and the difference it makes to our customers' lives, it's very hard not to feel passionate about it and to be motivated by that. And I think, for the vast majority of colleagues who work, with us at Motability Operations, they also see that. So it's a really good blend of somewhere where it's commercial, it's challenging, there's a big scale. Everything we do in terms of numbers, we've got over 700,000 customers at the moment. Wow. So we're by far and away the largest leasing company in the UK. So there's sort of massive challenge and complexity that goes with that. But sitting behind that is real clear purpose that customers are at the heart of everything we do. We recognise it's crucially important that without the interventions that we make, our customers will get left behind, and therefore we know we need to take the lead in terms of sort of making a difference. And I suppose the difference we make is really tangible. So that's really exciting, and it's difficult not to feel passionate about that when you can see the difference that makes. I think the insight though that working at Motability Operations has given me in terms of disability and that sort of connectivity with disability in all different forms, really then led me into a couple of things outside of work, and for many years now I've been a big supporter of a local charity called Props, which stands for Providing Opportunity and Support, which is about enabling young adults who've exited mainstream education and giving them vocational training and an opportunity and a skill set to hopefully more fully participate in normal everyday life. And so I've been a keen supporter of them for many years. We do a annual bike ride from Bristol to Bordeaux, and this will be the 10th year I've done that.
Must be fit then?
I try and keep fit, and the bike, the time on the bike definitely keeps me honest in that regard.
Well, great. No, that's a good story actually, because I think a lot of people maybe struggle with the question, what is your why? Especially early on in your career, and I think that resonates with a lot of people. It did with me, myself, prior to setting up a purpose-driven business. I worked with big corporates, and if somebody asked me what was my why 5 years ago, I wouldn't have a clue, and it'd be very different. And it's quite encouraging actually how you've almost found purpose through the organisation that you work in that's then influenced your own personal ventures as well at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely that. And as I say, it has opened my eyes up to a better understanding of disability and how that can affect and frankly, how many people are affected by different forms of disability in the UK. And so, it's great to, as I say, work somewhere where you can, very much focus, singularly focused on removing barriers and allowing those individuals to lead fuller lives.
So let's get on to that then in terms of the purpose of the organisation. How would you describe that for Motability Operations?
So, one of the transformations the business has gone through in the last 20 years or so, and sort of going back to 2001, it was probably slightly confused in terms of its identity, and it wasn't run on a particularly sort of commercial basis. And the model of disability in the UK back then was one of people with disabilities, we need to give them a benefit, it's a handout, and they should be grateful for receiving that. And so, the fact we're providing them with a vehicle, that's great. And it may not be a suitable vehicle, but they should be grateful for what they receive. So it was much more sort of charitable model. Yeah. What's transformed over many, many years now has been, actually, no, do you know what? These are customers who are choosing to use their disposable income to access a product and service, and we should give them brilliant customer service, and actually recognising that because of their disabilities they have particular needs that we need to meet and service. So the focus has been around running the business in a commercial way, but we are our shareholders are the four main banks in the UK, but they've waived all rights to any dividends. So we're not here to generate profit to line shareholders' pockets. Any profit we do make is reinvested back into the business. So very much profit for purpose. And that coexists really well with running or operating the business on a commercial footing to drive good value, but that value goes to customers and as I say, not to the shareholder. And for us, we're very keen that we're very transparent in everything we do, and it's important we are held to account in terms of that value that we do provide. So, yes, we're the sole provider of the Motability Scheme in the UK, but we need to use that and our scale to drive efficiency, value for money, use those economies of scale to get the best deal for our customers.
That's great. And I think with when you say profit for purpose, can you elaborate on that a little bit more? Because I think there are a few things that, other than what the business does, obviously that's the purpose in itself, is helping disabled people have access to mobility. But there are some other really interesting things we talked about before around your annual charitable activities. I think you also mentioned that you're you're going through the B Corp process at the moment as well. Could you just expand a little bit on that?
Yeah, certainly. So, I mean, as I said, we're really clear in terms of our social purpose. We have one customer base, and we're very much focused on that. But for that to be truly authentic, I think that's got to that approach and that the culture has got to ring through in terms of for our employees and all of the ways we interface with suppliers. Right up and down that sort of supply chain. So, it's important that we, a lot of companies these days, I think, have been perhaps labelled with greenwashing or seeking accreditations and that sort of thing. For us, that starts with what is our core purpose? What are we here to deliver? Mm-hmm. How do we go about that? And linking back to the point around people and employees, well, we firmly believe that if you get the right employees and we have the right business culture, that in turn will drive very good performance and good outcomes for customers. And so, we want to bring our culture and our purpose to life for our employees, and there are a whole range of things that we're thinking about in terms of how we can better engage with our employees and our workforce. And so, to the point you mentioned on charitable giving, we have match funding available for employees who want to undertake charitable events and activities. We have a fund available to invest in local initiatives. So we've got 4 different offices across the UK. So in Bristol, London, Edinburgh and Colville. Mm-hmm. And we're looking to work with and partner with local social enterprise groups, in those local areas. So it's very much about, on the one hand, using our UK-wide national scale to deliver value for our customers, but also we're acutely aware of the importance of, our localities and the communities that we operate in.
Mm. And I think you said, was it 250 million given to charity last year? Is that right?
Yeah, so because we don't pay dividends to shareholders, to the extent that we make profit above expectations, and that's something we've certainly seen over the last couple of years, given quite extraordinary inflation in the used car market, and this very much links to the new vehicle supply situation in the UK at the moment, and again that links back to sort of COVID and Ukrainian conflict, but that's led to a extremely elevated used car values. So we have made more profit than we have planned to make, and so, as I say, as a sort of purpose-driven organisation, we then think about, well, how do we reinvest that? How can we give that back to support our customers, or support the sort of wider mandate of charity and in particular Motability in the UK? And it's probably worth at that point just explaining how that structure works. So we operate the Motability Scheme under a contract with the Motability Foundation. So the Motability Foundation effectively provide oversight over our activities, and we need to meet certain contractual measures to evidence that we are delivering what we need to deliver in terms of value to our customers. To the extent, though, that, as I said, we have profit or capital which sits above our requirements, one option is to donate to the Motability Foundation. Now, they have a slightly wider mandate than ours. Ours is purely to deliver the Motability car scheme for customers who choose to use their government allowance to access that. Yeah. And there are about 2.1 million people in the UK who currently are in receipt of that higher rate allowance. The Foundation's remit, though, is broader, and it's to look at transportation needs of all disabled people in the UK. And in fact, there are about 14.1 million people in the UK who are registered with some sort of disability. So if we've come to a decision that we cannot deploy that money within our own walls to support our customer base, and perhaps we'll come on to talk about some of the initiatives that we have done in that regard in a moment, monies can also go across to the Foundation to support their wider mandate.
That's really interesting. I think there's not many organisations out there of your size that have that scale of impact, I wouldn't say. And I guess touching on the B Corp side of things, because I know it's not your necessary identity, but it's a good way for you to ensure that purpose is hardwired into to business. I haven't met many organisations in the multi-billions that are going through that journey at the moment. It tends to be sort of that SME market where, although it's very challenging and it's a hard process, it must be a lot more challenging for an organisation of your size with a lot of legacy processes, ways of working that probably need realigning. It'd be great to sort of understand from your perspective how you found it so far, really.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's definitely a journey. I think that's fair to say. For us, and as I said earlier, it's not about chasing an accreditation here. We're really clear on our purpose and what we're here to do. And in fact, though, what we do want to do is challenge ourselves with making sure that we hold ourselves to account. And if we want to measure ourselves up against, really good practice in terms of balancing profit and purpose and thinking about multiple stakeholders in our decision making. Mm-hmm. So it's not, and clearly for us it's not about shareholder value, but it's thinking about customers and employees, society more widely, the environment, local communities. And so that's very much what we've been doing for a number of years now. Mm. And so as we started to explore what B Corp was all about, we saw a huge alignment between what they're looking to achieve and deliver and what we are. You mentioned our scale, and it does mean it's more complex to go through that accreditation process. But I guess for us, we think, well, with our scale, we've got not only a huge opportunity but responsibility to deliver a really positive impact for society, for the environment. And mm-hmm. So huge alignment between what we are doing anyway and what B Corp stands for. So we're having to go through it's a really rigorous process, as you're well aware. And for a bigger organisation, I think probably the hurdles are somewhat bigger. We're going through what's called the B Movement Builder Programme, which mm-hmm. For companies with a turnover of in excess of $5 billion US dollars equivalent, right. You're required to go through that process. It is really detailed, and quite rightly so. So we're going through that journey at the moment. We're hopefully soon, in the next few months, moving from the private phase to the public phase, mm-hmm. Which is really exciting. I think interestingly as well for B Lab, the charity that oversees B Corp, that they're also having to think about, given our scale, the standards that they need to apply for the automotive sector as a whole. So we're really excited to be working with them and thinking about and continuing that conversation as they think about how they're developing the standards and how those should apply.
So it's not just pioneering it for your business, it's also, or your sector, it's also pioneering it for B Lab because it's the first one of its scale for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And so there's an ongoing dialogue, and I think there's a recognition that the automotive sector absolutely, I think, should be part of what B Corp are looking at, because the whole ethos is about it's about better business, isn't it? And it's about improving business for the better. And so by embracing and including the automotive sector within that, which is a critical part of the global infrastructure, but supporting them or holding them to account as that sector shifts with the transition to electric, for example, and greener technology. If we can be part of that and we can hold ourselves up to a high level of accountability and scrutiny, then I think that's a really important part of that journey.
And what is your view on the future of electrification in the market? Because looking at your fleet, it's huge, and it must be quite a big undertaking to even think of how do we tackle that. What's your view on the EV side of things?
Yeah, I mean, it's a key area of focus for us at the moment. And, the transition to electric vehicles is coming, and it's coming at quite a pace. And so what we can't do is sort of bury our head in the sand. And what we recognise is that our customers, the tendency will be, without our intervention, will be left behind, and are typically more hesitant in adopting new technology. Mm-hmm. And there's no doubt the sort of experience of an electric vehicle is vastly different to driving a petrol or diesel vehicle, and particularly when you think about the need to charge the vehicle. And so the whole myriad of things, such as range anxiety, and I think it's one thing if you run out of charge on a motorway, if you're able-bodied, you can get out of your vehicle and seek sort of sanctuary behind the barrier. But if you're, for example, a wheelchair user, it's an entirely different proposition. Yeah. When you think about charging and charging infrastructure, I think if you've got access to off-street parking at home, then charging is very different to if you haven't. About 40% of our customers don't have access to off-street parking, and so would be reliant on the public charging infrastructure, which is improving, but is very fragmented at the moment. And so what we're thinking about is how can we intervene and invest to support customers on that transition. And so one of the things we're doing with some of the profits that we've made over the last couple of years is we've committed £300 million to invest to support that transition to electric vehicles. Wow. So that's both subsidising the lease costs, because they are more expensive at the moment. If you are fortunate enough to have access to off-street parking at home, then at the moment we're putting in free of charge, or installing free of charge, the home charge points. For those who aren't able to charge at home, then we're looking, and we're running a number of pilots at the moment to think about, well, how can we aggregate our demand, give information to customers, and we're piloting something called the MO Go Charge app at the moment, which looks to aggregate the charging, your ability to purchase or pay for charging across the public charging network. And about 65% of rapid charges now in the UK are covered by our Go Charge app. Okay. And because at the moment, if you do that independently, you'll need multiple apps, and you'll be charged multiple prices depending on where you charge. So for us, it's about thinking, how can we use our scale and our financial muscle to actually intervene to support customers on that transition. But it's currently we've got about 40,000 customers in electric vehicles, so it's about 5% of the fleet, but that's growing quickly, and it's inevitable that more customers are going to have to transition to that over the coming years. Our sort of aspirational goal is that by 2032, 8 out of 10 customers will have transitioned to an electric vehicle. And for us, the measure of success is that happens seamlessly. That we offer a worry-free mobility package now, and customers are very familiar with that in a petrol or diesel vehicle. And we want to offer that same, seamless, worry-free proposition in an electric vehicle.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that actually in terms of the practicalities of the charging side of things. If you're not able-bodied, I mean, that's a big consideration. Hopefully, the charging infrastructure will speed up.
Yeah,
and customers.
I think it's more charge points will become available. That fragmentation, I think, will that we have now, that will consolidate, I think, in terms of providers. But it's interesting. I mean, next time you see a public charge point, think about it through the eyes of accessibility. Quite often, the actual charge point will have a sort of curb built around it, or metal barriers, which I understand why that's there, to stop vehicles backing into them. Not great though if you're in a wheelchair, and actually just the charge cables themselves are heavy and cumbersome. So there's a lot to be thought about, and quite often the case is that disability is not thought of at the sort of forefront of design and technology, and it's often sort of being retrofitted. And so what we're thinking about is how can we intervene to bring some of that thinking to the forefront of the design phase. And in fact, one thing we're doing at the moment with a project with a design institute called Callum is coming up with a concept car for a wheelchair accessible electric vehicle.
Oh, great.
So again, the transition to electrics for wheelchair accessible vehicles, which are typified by vehicles where you have to cut into the chassis, you have to put ramps and lifts into them. That's fine on a petrol or diesel vehicle. But with most electric vehicles, the battery is in the floor plate. You can't cut into that, or I wouldn't recommend you did, because so we're coming up with a concept vehicle, which we're not looking to go into production ourselves, but having developed that, put that in front of some OEMs, and that will have a use beyond just serving a disabled audience, but sort of commercially, camper vehicles, that sort of thing.
Yeah, well, hopefully it'll challenge people just to think a bit differently and actually assess the problem, because ultimately, I hadn't thought of that before, but it's not inclusive, is it? The charging infrastructure that's there at the moment, so it needs adapting. So just, I guess, in terms of your story and the time that you've been at Motability, over 23 years, now CFO. I think when we spoke before, and when you look across the whole team, really, there's so much tenure and so much stickability, you could call it, with the talent that you have. And I think a lot of organisations at the moment are really struggling with retention of talent, and more so now, where we're in a war for talent, really, where there are many jobs, not so many candidates. People are throwing money at the problem, offering crazy salaries to attract people. So turnover is higher than it has been in a lot of organisations, whereas you guys seem to be bucking the trend a little bit there. So I'd really like to dig into what it is about your culture that maybe achieves that for your business, and what you personally are doing as a CFO to tackle and improve the culture.
Yeah, I mean, our culture is something which we believe is fundamental to our success, and we undertake annually an employee culture survey, which is run independently. I think there are about 70 or so questions in there which ask our employees, what do you think of the communication, the leadership, the engagement? What could you improve? What could be better? And we're not simply doing that to hopefully get a good score and feel good about ourselves. It's actually about understanding, well, what can we improve? And so we use that as one of many of the feedback tools to constantly challenge ourselves as to what we could do better. I think, to your question around the sort of tenure of the organisation, I think part of it is, we touched on earlier, the really clear purpose in terms of what we do, and that is a massive draw, I think, for people, and people. More fulfillment, yeah. and people do stick around because of that. But I think the challenge and opportunity that the business offers as well. So we're massive in terms of customer numbers, and 10 billion balance sheet, 750,000 customers. But we've only got sort of 1,800 employees, that's sort of medium size, and so. Nobody is a small cog in a sort of big wheel. I think it's there's a great opportunity for people working at Motability Operations to, I think, tangibly feel how they can make a difference, how they're contributing to the whole. Progression opportunities. I mean, there's always a balance there, because I think yes, we look to progress from within, but equally we recognise that you need to bring in fresh talent, new ideas, fresh pair of eyes. And so there's always been that blend. But I think, what we've been able to provide for a lot of people is really good development opportunity within. And, for me, I see a number of people I've recruited over the years who've come in through the finance team, they've qualified, they've progressed, and then they've branched out, so stepped out of finance, and they're either working in technology or business risk or impact and sustainability. Project management. So, I think we, and I take particular pride, I think, in the fact that those people that I've brought in, and through my team we've nurtured, brought those up and through, are being really successful.
Yeah, no, I think the purpose side of things is huge when it comes to retention, because it becomes more than a job, and we've seen that a lot with our clients across those purpose-driven sectors or charity sectors. They do tend to have good retention, but I think with Motability Operations, I was just quite intrigued on your engagement in the culture, because I think, although you say you send a survey once a year, and I think loads of businesses do that.
Yeah.
I do it, but what amazed me was 1,800 staff. You had 90% engagement on a 70 question questionnaire.
Yeah.
I sent one out to my team of 10, and the amount of chasing I had to do to get them to fill it out was unreal. So how do you achieve that? Because there must be something underlying there that makes them want to have a voice in the organisation's future.
Yeah, I was going to say, it takes me a long time to fill out 1,800 survey responses. But, I think, it's much more than just a survey, clearly, and it's about those constant touch points in terms of engagement through the year. So communication is key, and we do a whole series of things in terms of employee webinars, twice a year employee roadshows, to make sure, no matter who you are in the business, you're aware of what we're working on, what the priorities are, what the performance is. We have a number of employee forums as well. So we have a series of impact and sustainability champions, so nominated from all different parts of the business to have a voice in terms of what we're doing in that space. Within my own division, we have a finance forum, and again, what that is a representative from each of the different teams, and I sit down with them once a month or once a quarter, a bit like a sort of skip meeting where I want to hear from them directly, and the feedback that they can bring into that is not necessarily their direct feedback, but of their teams, and it's all anonymised, so it's a very open forum for being honest about what's working, what isn't working well. I think for me, though, also feeding back to them, okay, well, I hear you, we'll think about that, we can adjust that, we can change that, but also whether things you can't do or you can't change, just explaining why. And so openness, transparency. I think the other thing where we've made really good progress over the last couple of years is when we're thinking about diversity and inclusion. Mm-hmm. So we have employee networks, a REACH network, which stands for race, ethnicity and cultural heritage. Mm-hmm. I managed to say that, just about got that out. We have a Pride network, we have an Enable network, which is focusing on disability in the workplace, and a gender network as well. And so, again, that's another way for employees to have a voice and to engage in important conversations, and I guess then for the senior leadership to also hear what the issues are, what the challenges are, what we can learn from other businesses. And one of my specific roles is I act as sponsor or mentor for the lead of the REACH network. And so that's, for me, direct connectivity with that conversation, which is really, I think, enlightening for me, really insightful as well.
Yeah. No, that's really good advice, because I think where a lot of organisations go wrong is that they send a pulse survey, they get some data, and then the answers just go into a black hole, and the employees never know, does anything actually get done with this? So I think your ideas there around creating communities, creating champions, forums where those conversations are happening all the time. They're hardwired. But then I think most importantly is then the leadership feeding back to the staff to say, this is what we did. This is what since the last survey, this is what we can do from this service, and this is what we can't really do right now, but we hear you. Do you know what I mean? I think
Absolutely.
That's quite refreshing, because I think it's sometimes difficult to sort of weave it into the fabric of the business in that way. So there's some really good takeaways, I think, for the audience. And then from an EDI perspective, it seems like you have quite good diversity across the organisation, certainly at the sort of entry to mid-level of the business. How have you achieved that, and what's your sort of plan to keep moving the needle moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, we do, and I think it would be easy to be complacent and say, if you look at the stats, they're reasonable. I think it's quite different though when you look, when you look at overall numbers, that's one thing, but then when you look at how that's distributed across the organisation and through sort of management levels, it's a different picture. And so we really want to challenge ourselves to ensure that there's good representation of diversity at all levels in the business, and we're not there at the moment. And so again, one of the aspirational goals we've set ourselves is that by 2030, we want our organisation at all levels to be representative of UK society. And so by that we mean, with a reference to UK census data, that we want the sort of the characteristics of the populations in the different areas where we operate to mirror, what we have in our workplace.
I really like that way of looking at it, actually. That's a great goal.
And at the moment that isn't the case. And so why 2030? That can feel like quite a long way out. I think we're realistic also that change will take time. So what are we doing about it now? Well, we're thinking about the talent pipeline. So partly to the earlier conversation about development of talent within and making sure there aren't any barriers to prevent anybody in the organisation, regardless of whether they're in an underrepresented group or not, to come through and progress. We're looking to work. I guess the way we're working with recruitment agencies as well is thinking about and tasking them a bit of the challenge back to you. Leo, is saying, when we look to recruit, how can we ensure that we have a balanced shortlist, one that is representative, and that why is it that currently we aren't necessarily reaching into all those areas that we can. Some of the things we're thinking about is how we can partner with local organisations, and so we're working with or starting to work with Babasa, which I know you're familiar with, as a social enterprise organisation based in Bristol, which very much focused on equipping young individuals with the skill set, and access to level the playing field, I suppose, in terms of those employment opportunities. So there are lots of things we're doing and thinking about. It's something we, as an exec, also, we're targeted on as well. I mean, so that is something that we are, absolutely focused on. But it will take time, and I think it's very easy, or too easy, to say, well, we've tried and it's just really difficult, and we tried to have a balanced shortlist, but we just didn't get the candidates through the door. That's not acceptable. We've got to try harder. Yeah,
absolutely. And actually what you said there resonated a little bit, I think, where you talk about challenging your suppliers. I think where it's easy just to make assumptions on, okay, they can provide me with diverse talent, or they claim to be able to do that, and how are they doing that? And I think that example that you've given just now, the fact that you challenged me when I came in to talk, how do we do it as Core 3, and it just got me thinking more, and just, okay, we're not doing enough. We do the usual stuff like non-biased training, and we, I guess, beyond the EDI focus that we have as a team. Then we partner with Babasa, as you talked about, and the great work that they do to help ethnic minorities in Bristol. But that's not enough. And I think that question that you asked me then has triggered me to go and think more about, okay, how do we do this? And this is something I wanted to talk to you about after, but we've now working on setting up a network for disabled finance professionals. We're going to do the same with BAME, Women in Finance, and really build those networks and communities, because I think unless you're ingrained in them every day, it's very difficult to just attract them from a job advert, So I think challenging your suppliers is a really good one, and it's across the board, not just for talent. So that's a really good point. So I guess to finish, as a successful CFO from a huge organisation, it'd just be good to learn from you, really. What do you think the future finance looks like?
future in terms of the role of CFO?
The role of the CFO and the department in general, I think.
I mean, one thing I think has made what we've got as a finance team successful over the years is thinking about yourselves and your team as not a support function or a back office function, but how can we as a function offer value to the business, whether that's through business partnering, making sure finance shouldn't be seen as the holding the purse strings or the gatekeeper, and which we are, but actually it's much more than just that. And I think, going back to the point on culture, going back maybe 10 years or so ago, finance as a team weren't doing so well in the culture survey. So we look at it at a divisional level, and the team weren't feeling as engaged and weren't feeling as aligned to the purpose of the organisation. And one of the questions I asked the company who were running the survey for us, and this was me trying to get a bit of comfort, I guess, was I assume that's typically the case, so isn't it? The back office support functions don't score so well in the survey, and they said, yeah, absolutely, that is the case. And I thought, well, yeah, it doesn't have to be that way. And so what we've tried to do is encourage our people to think about, okay, you may be in a support function, but actually everything we do is all part of contributing to the purpose of the organisation and what we do. If you're in customer service, when you think about customers, you're thinking about our customers who are disabled customers driving the vehicles. When we think about our customers, in fact, maybe it's internal customers, but the ethos and the approach with dealing with customers and giving great service and getting things right first time, treat people how you want to be treated yourself, all that good stuff. Trying to instill that within our team and getting people to think, well, actually, we are a really important part of, call it a support function, call it what you will, in terms of delivering the success of the business. And so a big part of that has been, I think, recognition of that for our people. And by recognition, I don't mean financial recognition. It's the feedback loop. It's the pat on the back. It's the that was an amazing piece of work that helped us deliver, this really good outcome for our customers. And so I think for a successful finance team, you need to ensure they are connected properly to the business. I think the actual role we play going forward, I think particularly in, we talked briefly around the sort of transformation that Motability Operations is going through, not least the transition to electric vehicles. It's crucial that we are part of that conversation, can inform that, can support the business on that transition.
Yeah, it's really interesting what you say there when it came to the survey of how the back office or the finance team didn't score as highly as the rest of the business that are maybe more connected to your customers. And it reminded me of a conversation that I had with a finance director a year or two ago, actually, and she said something that resonated with me, where the role of finance traditionally is just to measure revenue and profit, and be that scorecard from a finance perspective. So it's very easy to fall into the trap of feeling disconnected from anything else, whether that's the purpose, the values of the organisation, and I guess also that it's quite natural to fall into that short-term thinking, especially when you look at a P&L, right? This is month on month, quarter on quarter, year on year. It's quite short-term, especially when you're in the trenches producing the month end, month in, month out. So what advice would you give the audience in terms of how to inject a little bit more long-termism, a bit more sort of connection to the wider purpose for the finance team?
Yeah, really good question. The key thing is, how does the finance team ensure they are connected with the business? And there are a few things that we do. For example, in our divisional team meetings, we are constantly asking, inviting guests in from other parts of the business to come in and talk about what what they're doing. So making sure there's, in our vehicle remarketing team, they'll come and give us an update. Our HR team will come and talk to us about some of the initiatives they're working on. We'll update them on what we're doing on impact and sustainability. So I think that's definitely a key part of that. I touched on the recognition point already, but the nature often of, back to what you were just saying about it's producing the financial results, or it can often be, the spotlight comes on you when something's gone wrong because something's incorrect. I also look after our workplace team, so responsible for looking after the building infrastructure. And it's typical, isn't it, in terms of what they get is aircon's not working, coffee machine isn't working. So how do we accept that because that's clearly part of the role and what they do, but just celebrate the successes and the smallest things. We've done something on time. I know that's what's expected, but actually, well, somebody's put some extra, the extra hours in to do that. Just recognise them, and I think that goes a long, long way.
Love that. And a great note to finish on, I think. So I think your recognition for your team is quite easy sometimes to overlook or forget. And, part of, I guess, going back to retention and culture, it's all sort of interwoven into each other, isn't it, with what you've talked about there. So thank you so much for coming on, Matthew. It's been an absolute pleasure. And hopefully it's been really valuable for our audience. If people wanted to reach out to you, Matthew, pick your brain on anything, were you happy for them to do so? Yeah, absolutely. So I'm very happy for my details to be shared. I've got my LinkedIn profile, of course, which you can access. So yeah, very happy to. And thank you. Thank you. So thanks for listening to the Conscious Finance podcast. It's really appreciated. And if you can help us increase our impact and inspire others, it would be much appreciated. All we ask is just subscribe to the podcast, give us a like or drop us a comment. It really does help get the word out there and expand our reach and hopefully inspire others to drive their impact further. Thank you.